Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is adjusting really well to taking the class online. I am trying to make these videos as detailed as possible and give you as much information as possible, similar to what I would do in the classroom with you guys when you ask questions and I will give you some responses. So I'm trying to give you as much information as possible in the video to kind of help you or guide you through the activity. But please use the Padlet. The Padlet is set up so you guys can communicate and ask questions and get feedback, etc. Please utilize it to help you with your work, whether it's with the responses at the end, reflection, or the actual code. So please just ask. I will respond. I am also giving participation points for you responding on the Padlet. So if you respond, you get some extra points. So start doing it, please. All right. So we're going to build on the activity that we just completed. Um, you were able to create a function that allowed you to draw different types of shapes, and you got introduced to using if statements, right? So it, or what we call conditional statements. A if statement or a if else statement is your most common conditional statement, right? So you have to become really, really familiar with that. And you're going to get to work with that in this activity that you're going to be doing for the next 2 days. So it's not just today. It's not going to be due today. It's going to be due Thursday, at the end of Thursday. So you have 2 days to work on this. All right. So we're going to be working on, we're going to look at some more conditional statements as well as we're going to look at variables, right? So we're going to get more into variables, which is going to be also important for this activity. So right here, we got this button that says make a variable. If we want to make a variable, we click on it and it gives us two options. It gives us for all sprites and for this sprite only. This is what we call our global variable option. This is what we call our local variable option, right? Remember, local variables are relegated to only that area. So for this one, if I clicked on for this sprite only, it would only work on this sprite. We would only be able to find this variable on this sprite, similar to how we're only able to find certain variables in certain functions, right? That's a local variable. And then we have our global variable. Our global variable allows us to utilize it throughout the entire program. So we can use it anywhere in the program. And we're able to tell the difference by this. So let me write this. So let me say names variable names. You're going to see it said that one was for all sprites. And I want to create one called, we'll create another variable. We're going to call this one cars. And I click the button for this sprite only. So you'll see the difference. So you see it says sprite 2 cars. So that's letting me know that sprite 2 has this variable called cars. It does not, the rest of the sprites don't have this variable. We can also look right here. We see this local, this little marker. This should be familiar with if you did like Google Maps or Google or ever look something up where you're trying to locate something. This is a location bar or a location button. So we can tell the difference. If I click on sprite 1, the sprite 1, you can see that variable disappears. It's no longer there. It's no longer available because it only works for sprite 2. Okay? So make sure you understand there's a local variable, there's a global variable. Now, speaking of which, do we remember exactly what a variable is? That is important because variables are used throughout programming all the time, right? We just identified two variables, right? And just to specify what a variable is, I'm go over it again. You're familiar with the variable being used as a symbol for something that's unknown, right? But we're going to simplify it even more. In computer science, a variable is a container, is a storage container. And what does it do? It stores information, right? So we only use it to store information. We can hold values in there. We can hold programs inside of it. We can hold a bunch of different things inside of a variable, right? So we need to make sure we understand that it is a storage container. It was going to store some information, right? And so we're familiar with this variable, but there's other variables that we use as well. One of those is our question variable or our question, right? So we can ask a question and we can wait for a response from the user, right? So wherever this question is asked, this question or the response that the user gives is stored somewhere in which we can now retrieve that response, right? So this one right here, what says ask your name. If I click on this, it says what's your name. It's asking for some input, so I'm going to give it some input. My name is going to be Tracy today. So I type in Tracy. Now you don't see nothing here, but if I click on this answer button, Tracy is going to show up, as you can see, because that information is stored there and is waiting to be retrieved. If I type something else in, um, I press this button, and now that information is sitting there waiting to be retrieved, right? So as soon as I ask a question, that information gets overwritten because it is a container to store something. But once I give it more information, it overrides the previous information, right? It overrides the previous information. So it's a temporary storage. This one's a temporary storage unit, right? Just like any variable, it's only temporary, right? Because we can override it. We can actually store information on top of it to get rid of it. So one thing that we're going to have to learn how to do is how to take that information and put it elsewhere, right? We got to learn how to put it elsewhere. And so what we can do is we can actually take a variable that we created, names, and we could take that answer and store it inside of names, right? So we can store it inside names. So now when it asks me that question, what's your name? I'm typing in Brenda. As you can see up here, Brenda showed up because this allows us to visualize what's going on in our variable. So in our names variable, Brenda is the value for this variable, right? And it's going to be the value for that variable until I ask this question again, and then that's going to override that one. So if I go ahead and ask that question, and I'm going to say now my name is Ricardo. Now Ricardo is in there, right? So Ricardo is stored inside the names variable. All right. So a couple other things you're going to probably need for this activity is this join button. This join button allows us to say things or put phrases together. So we can consistently put phrases together. Another thing we can do is we can actually take our variables and drop them inside of here. So now when I click on this, instead of it saying hello world, because that's what it says right here, right? Hello world. I'm going to put this here and it's going to say hello Ricardo. Pretty cool, right? All right, so that's going to be one block you're going to need for this activity. Um, I think that is it. You're also going to need a couple of your loops, and you're going to need your if statement, right? You're going to need your if statement. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to need your if statement, and you're going to need some of these, right? You're going to need some operators because part of your program is going to ask you to check some information. The way you check is by using some operators. So you'll end up using these operators here. Okay. Um, it is a hard, it is, I'm not gonna say it's hard. It is a challenging activity, but I do believe that you guys will do well. Utilize what you just got from this video. You're gonna have to stretch your thinking a little bit, but overall, I think you'll get it. And once you get the first portion, the second portion will make more sense and a lot easier. So make sure that you look at the examples on your activity guide and enjoy the next 2 days with this activity. I think it will be fun.